I challenge you to find a strawberry that tastes even slightly as good as one you grew yourself. In fact, I'll let you in on a little secret. You can't. This is a strawberry flower that becomes a strawberry. And these are strawberry leaves that draw energy from the sun, that help create strawberry flowers that become strawberries. If you don't have enough leaves, you can't have enough flowers, and you can't have enough berries. Sometimes strawberries put out a lot of flowers before they have a lot of leaves, so I remove them early in the season. That way my strawberries can focus on making those leaves. The next thing they're going to do is throw out those weird little stems. If that part touches the ground, it's going to grow roots, and that's where a whole new strawberry plant grows. This is called a runner, and I remove it from my plants. Strawberries need mulch because when it is too hot or too dry they stop producing fruit and flowers, and this mulch helps to maintain the moisture and temperature at the right level. Additionally, I recommend using agrotextile and pine bark on top as a mulch instead of straw. Why does straw tend to collect mold pathogens which can make your strawberries sick, while pine bark has antibacterial properties? These are just a few tips I have used to produce juicy strawberries year after year. And with a few tips they are also super easy to grow. If you want to grow perfect, sweet, juicy, flavorful strawberries every time, you have come to the right place. Towards the end of spring, strawberries start to appear in large numbers. So today I want to share with you how to grow your own organic strawberries from your own garden so you can eat the sweetest strawberries you've ever eaten, and where my goal is to help you develop your green thumb. Without further ado, I want you to please embrace the subscribe and like button, and I will give you the power to grow the juiciest and most epic strawberries ever. Here we go. Varieties. Take a look at these little beauties. We'll plant them in a moment, but first let's take a look at the different types of strawberries you can grow. I want to make sure I can harvest strawberries for as long as possible, and that means growing varieties that will produce together for a longer period of time. The harvest of the fruit from one variety can take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, and the difference in ripeness between the earliest and latest varieties can be more than 3 months. If we choose the right varieties, we have fruit for about 7 weeks, and if we have strawberries under foil, they are 2 weeks earlier. From one variety you can get 40 kilograms of fruit from 100 square meters, while from another variety 140 kilograms, so it is quite important which variety you choose. We have repeat-bearing strawberries, which bear fruit from April to September. So they bear fruit a little every day, in contrast to June strawberries, which bear the entire harvest in just 1 month. Strawberries bearing fruit in the summer or in June tend to bear fruit at one time over a period of about 2 to 3 weeks. In this group they are divided into early, mid-season and end-of-season strawberries, which will bear fruit at any time from early summer to late summer. Then we have our ever-bearing strawberries, also known as repeat-bearing strawberries. These strawberries tend to bear fruit at intervals throughout the summer and even into early fall. If you're looking for a steady supply of strawberries to pick whenever possible, then this may be the choice for you. On the other hand, if you want to have a lot of strawberries at once, for example for making jam, then strawberries that bear fruit in June will be a better fit for you. If you're new to strawberry growing or are simply confused by the huge number of varieties that promise all sorts of benefits, let me clear things up a bit. And here's the same list organized by ripening period. Pick 1 or 2 from each column and you'll have a perfect selection for the entire season. And again, these are perennials. You'll have them year after year. So make sure you pick the right variety. The abundance of reflowering and fruit bearing depends to a large extent on the fertility of the soil and careful care, especially watering of the plants during periods of drought. Let's talk about soil and sun requirements. And why did I choose this spot? First of all, strawberries love the sun. They want over 8 hours of sun a day. That's what this spot will give them. Strawberries grow almost anywhere, but if you want the best results, which means sweeter, more fragrant fruit and more, They need at least 6 hours of sun, or 8 or more if you want to perfect and pamper your strawberries. Strawberries grow best in full sun, but just because you have an area with a little bit of shade doesn't mean you shouldn't grow strawberries. As you can see here, we're under some fruit bushes and trees, and there are a bunch of different things growing, including strawberries. We've got a decent harvest here, not as big as our full sun sections, but we've still got a harvest. Where we have a little more light, the strawberries do a little better, but if you live in a place where there's partial shade, I definitely suggest growing strawberries. One thing is they don't take up a lot of space on the ground, and the other thing is that you're going to get a harvest anyway. So it's worth it. Fertilizing. To get things off to a good start, I throw in a couple of buckets of really well-rotted manure. Now you can just use some garden compost, something like that, for a little extra organic goodness. And then just to be safe, just a handful of fish meal or bone meal, they need a little fertilizer. This is a balanced organic fertilizer. If you're looking for something vegan, just look for something that's balanced and of course organic. Now you might have heard that strawberries need a lot of fertilizer, which is not entirely true. Strawberries need fertilizer, but if you fertilize them early of the year and early spring with a lot of nitrogen, they'll produce a lot more leaves and not enough strawberries. So especially for strawberries that are perennial, you want to use a slow-release fertilizer. I use slow-release chicken manure or just compost, regular compost, or horse manure, cow manure. I add it to the soil, I mix it in with the soil, and over time it breaks down and creates really rich organic soil. It provides consistent nutrients for the strawberry plants. And here's another tip. You want to incorporate all of that fertilizer into the soil before you plant the strawberries, because once you plant the strawberries, it's really hard to apply any kind of fertilizer. And I'll tell you why. The reason is you have to mulch the strawberries really well. The roots of the strawberry plants don't like to dry out, and they don't like to sit in wet soil either. This is why you may notice in strawberry fields that they are planted on mounds, and you need to have the right distance between strawberry plants to give them enough room to grow and also block sunlight from hitting the roots or soil. Once my strawberries start to flower, I will water them with a high potassium liquid tomato fertilizer, which will help the fruit swell to its magnificent appearance, and then in early spring I will spread an all-purpose organic fertilizer to help the plants through the upcoming growing season. If you want to fertilize with mineral fertilizer, we do it in 2 stages. We apply fertilizer in the spring and after the harvest is finished. How to plant strawberries. We have a choice between potted strawberries or ground-dug strawberries with bare roots. If you want to grow your own strawberries, the first thing I suggest is to get some good quality bare root strawberries. And try to get some disease-resistant varieties if you can. It's worth buying bare root. Well, to put it bluntly, it's much, much cheaper. That's about 20 bare root strawberries. It cost me the same as 4 individual strawberry plants from the supermarket. You can plant strawberries in the second half of July, or even right up until frost, but it's better to plant them as early as possible, then you'll have a harvest in the spring. Now it's important to get the depth right, and this is very easy to do with container-grown strawberry plants like these because they're planted at the same depth they were in their nursery pots, but with bare root plants we have to be a little more careful. With bare root plants it's really important to make sure you're not planting them too deep or too shallow. Too deep and the plant can just rot, and too shallow and it can wave around in the wind and dry out very easily, creating a brittle and weak plant. You want to plant it so that the crown where the leaves are coming from is just slightly above the soil like this. When you plant your strawberries, you're going to want to match the soil line at this point. You really don't want any of this part, other than the very tops of the roots, to be underground. You don't want to bury the crown, and of course, we have new leaves and new stems that are coming out and are really starting to grow. So the real key with bare root strawberries is not burying them anywhere above that point. Another thing is when you plant them. You want to plant them in early spring, when the ground is starting to warm up. Strawberry plants are also relatively hardy, so you don't have to wait until you know the ground is really warm like you would with peppers or tomatoes. They look pretty shocking, almost no leaves and really pretty sickly, But don't let that put you off. Once you put them in the ground, they will come alive. Plant them about 30 centimeters apart. See what the diameter of the spread roots is. It is about that size. Not too densely so that large bushes can grow. We will get more strawberries from one large bush than from two small ones. When planting in rows, plant in rows every 60 centimeters with a distance of 20 centimeters. Now that we know what not to do when dealing with a bare root strawberry, before planting we will water it for about 30 minutes to an hour in water. Remember, they have come a long way. These roots will develop much better when we transplant them to a bed, if we water them. We also water the bed after planting. The roots can't curl upwards. How healthy the plants are when you first plant them, how big the roots are, will have a big impact on how early you can achieve success and yield. Soil. As for the soil, you can put some of that soil from the bag into the hole. The soil should be fertile and well drained. Strawberries don't need a pH of 4.5 to 5 like blueberries, but strawberries prefer slightly acidic soil, a little more acidic than the average vegetable crop. So we're talking about a range of 5.8 to 6.4. Most soils are a little higher. You can also add mycorrhizal fungi, which works well for strawberries. Strawberries, especially if you can't provide them with water, require fertile soil. It doesn't even have to be very deep. Mulching. Now let's move on to mulching, which is another tip, and mulching strawberries is very important. In commercial conditions, a very thin black foil is used on top of the ridges and holes are punched in it and strawberries are planted in this way. But I suggest replacing the plastic with agrotextile, so I planted strawberries and then mulched them with wood shavings. Remember that the black color heats up a lot, so covering it with bark is quite important. Thanks to this, after mulching strawberries, the soil retains moisture and the roots do not dry out and do not overheat. The plants are moderately cool and in this way they produce a lot of strawberries. If the soil dries out or the roots get too hot, the strawberries will stop producing flowers and stop producing strawberries. That's why you should always mulch your strawberries. I didn't mulch my strawberries before, and when it got a little hot, the strawberries stopped producing flowers and stopped producing strawberries. These unmulched strawberries are easily overgrown with weeds. And when it gets warm in July they are soft because they ripen quickly because it is too hot for them and the soil dries out quickly. Then we add a lot of wood mulch to the strawberries so that the roots are moist and cool. However, when it cools down, such mulch keeps the heat. So that is the key. Of course, you can use straw and many people do, but after the season it should be removed together with old leaves because it can lead to fungal diseases. Straw will really help keep the fruit in good condition and flawless. If you don't have straw, you can use something like dry grass clippings. Straw will work well where it is exceptionally sunny and dry, so that it does not start to rot and get moldy. Watering. A great tip for strawberries is to water them generously while they are establishing roots and during dry weather, which is especially important for potted plants, because they obviously won't be able to root in the native soil below. Once the plants are a little bigger and are starting to bear fruit, try to direct the water to the base of the plants so you don't soak the fruit, which can lead to problems like a kind of mold on them. As I mentioned earlier, strawberries like moist soil, but they don't like wet soil. That's why we plant them in mounds, which is already good. The watering schedule should be such that the soil is constantly moist. So if you have clay soil like mine, I water my strawberries every morning. If you have sandy soil, you may need to water twice a day because the soil will have much more drainage. So you can water in the morning and then in the evening. Just make sure the soil is moist and not dry out. Look at the size of it. That's a nice strawberry. And there's another one that's a little smaller. But these are really good to eat. Garlic and strawberries. These plants grow right next to my garlic, and would you believe it, garlic is the perfect companion plant for strawberries. Not only does it repel vampires, but it helps repel a lot of pests, like spider mites. Strawberries in containers. Because of their compact growth habit and fast-yielding nature, Strawberries are an excellent choice for growing in containers, which means anyone can grow them. I've grown them in wide, shallow containers with great success, and I've also tried growing them in hanging baskets, where the fruit hangs down, inviting you to pick them. However, growing them in containers is a pain, because they dry out quickly, and the smaller the container, the more often you need to water them. Removing the first flowers. There are a few things you should probably do with your strawberries during the season to make sure you get a good harvest. And one thing that's important when you first plant strawberries is that you want to invest in the future. So what you want to do is after you plant them, they're going to start flowering. The growth was amazing, but I did a few weird surgeries to make sure that it definitely does. So why not take a closer look at it? Look. Beautiful. Beautiful leaves. Nice dark green, very minimal problems. I mean, maybe a weird leaf here. But what don't you see on this strawberry? I'll give you a second, maybe put it in the comments. You can't see the flowers at all. Look, I cut the flowers off. But why would I kill my strawberries? Because I need more of those leaves. To make strawberries fruit forever, you have to remove all the first few flowers. This allows the plant to focus on making leaves. So it's time to say goodbye. I know it probably hurts, but in my opinion, it's a smart idea. By removing all the flowers, you'll allow it to develop leafy growth, which will give it more energy to produce even more fruit in the future. This way the strawberries can focus on developing roots. Once they've finished flowering and removed all the flowers, they'll start putting out runners and spreading out and double their production, maybe even triple it in a year. New strawberries. Here we have the main strawberry plant. It looks really nice. But look, it has this little alien tentacle growing out of it, and it runs over here, and then it goes over here again. It looks like a whole new strawberry plant. If I lift it up a little bit, you can see the roots starting to grow. That's what we call a strawberry runner. So strawberry runners are just one way that strawberries try to reproduce, make more strawberries. But if they do that, what might they not be doing? They might not be putting out more leaves. They may not put out nice juicy berries. And so a lot of people will say, remove the runners. I would definitely say remove all the runners, in my opinion, except maybe one. The only reason I'm leaving one on these is because you can see that there's a little gap between all these berries. I want it to be a nice, lush place full of strawberries. So I decided to cut off all the strawberry plants that I see, except for one per plant, and then they'll be gone. Because at this point there'll just be too many strawberry plants here and my goal is to fill them to the brim. So you want to remove those runners. That's going to focus all of the plant's energy on that single mother plant. If you let the runners grow more plants, the energy from the plant is going to be dissipated. If you have a setup where you have really wide row spacing, you can allow those runners to come out and produce a lot more young plants, which will also produce a lot more strawberries. So it depends on your strategy. But if you remove them, all of the energy goes to the mother plant to produce a lot more strawberries. So there's a trade-off. If you're really sad about removing the runners, you can just get a little pot of soil like this and pick out the runner. Something I love about strawberries is that they put out runners. They just keep giving. Strawberries produce lots of little wire-like stems called runners that we can use to our advantage to grow more strawberry plants. It's really easy, it's just a matter of pinning them down into the soil or the pot, the potting mix, and then once they've rooted, you can cut them off from the mother plant. That's what I'm doing here, and I'm going to have a few more strawberry plants because of it. Producing more strawberries this way is really easy and incredibly rewarding. So here's where it can root. And then you just cut it off. So after you remove the umbilical cord, you have a new strawberry in a pot that you can transplant wherever you want. And I said not to let any runners form at least in the first season for that very reason, so that the mother plant can get stronger and also produce some nice fruit. As the plants get older, they become less productive, so using runners is a great way to replace them. Strawberries will only produce really well for a few years. Then it slows down and the fruit is smaller. That's why it's a good idea to add new sections every few years. That way you can get rid of some of the old sections that aren't producing as much fruit as they used to. That's why it's good to have some kind of offset. Even the everbearers will produce a big harvest for maybe 2 or 3 years before you want to refresh them. But remember, I just gave you this tip about propagating from runners. So you can just do that. Those strawberries that are older than 3 years old are becoming susceptible to diseases and viruses, so it's worth thinking about changing not only the bush but also the place where you grow them. Weeds. When you have a new section of strawberries planted like we have here, a couple of things you want to remember in addition to removing the flowers as soon as they appear. Number 1 is to make sure you remove all the weeds that are coming up. Any perennial weeds, especially like crabgrass and things like that, because those roots on the strawberries are relatively shallow. So we don't want any competition. Birds. Watch out for birds. Netting is one option to physically keep them away from the ripening fruit, but make sure it's in place before the fruit really starts to get color. Another, some might say brilliant alternative, is to paint strawberry-sized rocks bright red, then place them between the plants and in the lead-up to the fruit ripening. The theory is that birds will come, peck at the strawberries, find them rock hard, and wake up mercilessly, then disappear and never come back. Has anyone tried this? Let me know in the comments. Snails. Another pest to watch out for are slugs. If the hole in the strawberry has sharp angles, it's probably a bird pecking at it, but if the hole is slightly rounded, it's more likely to be slugs. To control them, set out beer traps when the fruit starts to turn pinkish, and refill and empty the beer regularly. Slugs are especially a problem in wetter climates, so it's not a good idea to put down mulch too early. Trap number 1 that I set out is olive oil and soy sauce. So there's oil, so that they can't get out once they get in. The soy sauce is a lure. Flying insects, they lay eggs on strawberries, which hatch and turn into larvae. These are small green worms that attack strawberries and make holes in the strawberries. So to combat these pests, you can use BT or spinosad spray. This works on all caterpillars, cabbage cutters, etc. So I recommend it because they are nothing else but small mites that eat the pests from the inside. I also use the same strategy for strawberries. I recommend using it once a month. Frost. In early spring, sudden frosts can cause the flowers themselves to turn black and soft. If they get a hard frost, I wouldn't worry about it. I just remove those first flowers anyway and the plant gets motivated to produce more. But if you're worried about your strawberry friends during the cold spell, just cover them with something nice and warm, like this thick, fluffy cover. Made of white agrotextile. Harvest. The real joy of growing your own strawberries is that you can pick them at their absolute peak of perfection. You'll never have to put up with hard, bland fruit like, the ones from the market tasting like That's history. Pick strawberries in the warmth of the afternoon sun if you can, to really get the flavors going. The strawberries will keep well in the fridge, but the cold ruins their flavor a bit, so take them out to warm up before you eat them. So let's get to harvesting. While I'm doing that, by the way, I'm still going to be cleaning up the runners and any kind of dead, diseased, or damaged plants that I can. Just, why not make the most of this harvest session? So some of them are rotting, whether they're overripe, or they just got a pest, or something weird happened. So those, I'm just going to throw them in the compost. So that's not a bad little first harvest of our strawberries this season. And we have to remember, we're just getting started. But we have to taste them now. Let's take the biggest one, but sweet. When you pick them straight from the garden, it has a little bit of a field warmth to it that makes you know that you grew it yourself. Another tip to becoming a strawberry king, which is the best tip of all, is to pick strawberries. So when your strawberries start producing strawberries, you have to go to the garden and start picking strawberries every day. Because if you don't do that and you let the strawberries ripen on the plant will think that it has fulfilled its life purpose, its job is done, it has produced seeds, and it will stop producing flowers and stop producing strawberries. So you have to pick strawberries every day, and then the plant will think that it can't produce seeds for the next one generation. So it will produce more flowers and more strawberries. This will increase the yield per plant tenfold from the same garden. And this goes for other vegetables. The golden rule: harvest often, regularly, and everything that is ripe and fairly early rather than before it gets stringy. We've discussed quite a bit of this in this guide. So if you have any other questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments. While you're at it, I need to eat something fast. When harvesting, make sure to remove any strawberries that are gnawed, any that are moldy or anything. This will reduce the chances of spreading diseases all over the place. Towards the end of the growing season, when it starts to get cold, it's a good idea to cover all the strawberries with mulch. That way the strawberries don't freeze and then thaw and then freeze and then thaw again. If you're in an area where there's snow on the mountain all winter, that's fine too. That'll create insulation. Okay, we've mulched them. We've fertilized them. We've trimmed off all the extra flowers and runners that we see in the middle of growth. I think you've got it all figured out. And this year I've got another great strawberry harvest, definitely. That's encouraging. But that doesn't happen to everything in the garden every year. So I think it's important to have the right mindset. Remember to see the whole donut, not just the hole in the donut. There's always something good. There's always something to be grateful for. So we have to make sure that we appreciate those good things when they come. And I think that makes a big difference in gardening and even in how we approach life. Not everything is going to work out perfectly every time. But then again, that's what makes gardening so exciting. See you soon. Good luck in your garden, and I hope you're happy growing it, and if you hit subscribe, your strawberries will definitely be 70% sweeter.